Education services and becoming an advocate, a deep dive into navigating schools, therapies, service systems, and the emotional labor of learning to advocate while still being just a parent. Tina Underwood and her husband Walter have been married for 38 years and are the proud parents of two sons, Kevin and Michael. The couple first met while working in the same research group at Ford Aerospace in Palo Alto, beginning a lifelong partnership grounded in both family and shared professional roots. A California native, Tina grew up in a small Central Valley town as the middle daughter of three daughters and the first in her extended family to graduate from college. She earned a degree in electrical engineering from UC Davis and went on to build a 41-year career in the tech industry. Tina began as a software developer specializing in image processing for companies like International Imaging Systems and AccuSun. Later, transitioning into systems development roles at Netflix and Stanford University. She concluded her career as a project manager at the Stanford Graduate School of Business, where she worked for the final 10 years before retiring in February 2025. Walter also spent his career in tech, contributing to early intranet development at Hewlett Packard and later specializing in search technologies at companies including Netflix, Chegg, and LexisNexis. Throughout the years, Tina has maintained a close knit group of friends from college whose lives have evolved alongside her own, from early morning playdates when their children were young to regular dinners and annual trips today. This community has remained a constant source of connection and support. For over 40 years, they've also continued the tradition of hosting a Friends Thanksgiving long before the term Friendsgiving became a regular and popular saying. Tina has long been an active advocate in the special needs community. During Kevin's school years, she was deeply involved with Palo Alto Community Advisory Committee for Special Education, including serving 3 years as president. Through this work, she helped lead initiatives like the CAC Sweetheart Awards, recognizing individuals who made meaningful contributions to the lives of children with special needs. She and Walter are also members of St. Mark's Episcopal Church in Palo Alto, a community that has embraced their family with warmth and joy, especially Kevin, whose energy and enthusiasm during services have left a lasting impression on fellow parishioners. For nearly a decade, Tina has served on the Life Services Alternatives Board of Directors, including as chair of the Resource Development Committee. During her tenure at LSA, has expanded its impact significantly, launching major fundraising events like Home is Where the Heart Is and LSA's Run Home, and opening 4 new homes to support individuals with IDD. Today, Tina and Walter remain closely connected to their family. Their younger son, Michael, lives nearby in Sunnyvale with his wife and daughter, Hazel. Tina plays an active role as Hazel's weekly nanny, and both she and Walter continue to cherish time with their growing family. Kevin and Michael share a strong sibling bond, one filled with both closeness and the kind of playful dynamic that defines many brotherly relationships. Welcome, Tina.
Thank you.
Yeah. We as far as LSA goes, go way back. And I think that you have a connection to LSA because Kevin, before he started here, you were looking for a home. Is that right?
Sure. I was a part of a group of families, moms, and we had a similar purpose. All of us have a child with IDD, and we're looking for a appropriate place where our children could live as independently as possible.
Mm,
And so we visited and toured a number of places around the Bay Area.
yeah. During this time period, were you working full time
Sure,
or?
absolutely.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay,
So
wow.
when my kids were first born, I went part time, and I worked 3 days a week. But by the time Kevin was in middle school, I had returned to working full time. So during the search for a lifelong placement for Kevin, I was absolutely working full time.
Wow. So it's some would say it's almost like you had two or three jobs because you were caretaking for Kevin when he wasn't in school. You were also searching, like LSA does, for a place for an individual with IDD, and then you had an actual full time job.
Yeah, we call it the second shift is the home where you take care of your family, and
Wow.
the third shift is the extra, trying to find
Yeah.
appropriate placements.
Yeah. You seem to have a work ethic that does not take a whole lot of time for yourself.
Always a struggle. Something I could always improve on. I think moms in general tend to put the rest of the world first. So
Mm.
I'm better now that I'm retired.
Can I ask, did you see that in your home when you were growing up?
Um, yeah, my parents, my mother worked nights, my father worked days.
Wow.
And so we weren't in childcare, but they didn't get to see each other that often.
Wow.
And so that's kind of how it is. You do what you can do.
And the small town in Central Valley, what's the name of it?
Oh, Tracy.
Tracy?
It's
Okay.
no longer a small town. When I
Oh,
was
okay.
growing up, it was about 15,000 people, one middle school, one high school, and now it's got over 100,000 people and three high schools. So it's
Wow.
very different from when I was a kid.
People kind of traveling, pilgrimaging to find maybe a simpler, more affordable way of living.
Well, a lot of people still commute to the Bay Area but live there because it is a lot less expensive than
Yeah.
here.
So help me understand. You grew up three other siblings?
Oh, no, total of three.
Total of three. Two
I'm
other siblings, sorry.
You have an older sister and a younger sister,
Okay.
and I'm the middle. Yeah.
And you guys were kind of you were kind of handling yourself while mom was.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Summers we were always required. We had to go to summer school, and we were on our own until Dad got off work, which was always kind of entertaining. But yeah, we were pretty far apart, 4 years each. So when my older sister graduated from high school at 18, I was just 14, and my younger sister was 10.
Wow.
And so we were pretty far apart, so we could look after each other.
That sounds normal to
Mm-hmm.
me. That sounds like the type of setting a lot of people grew up in just years ago.
Mm-hmm.
What was the most interesting thing about growing up the way that you did?
That's an interesting question. Very good question. Let me think. Um, I mean, it was really, in some sense, kind of Mayberry RFD, where everyone knows everyone.
What
All
is
the.
RFD?
Oh, this is an old television show where of a small town sheriff and his kid. Um, and again, it's a small town. Everyone knows everyone. They know what you do, what you don't know, what the sisters are up to, what they're not up to, and so as a teenager, it can be kind of stifling. But it's also comforting that when something goes wrong, there's people there who know and can help.
So you kind of had some sitcom episodes happening.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay. What was the most challenging thing about leaving that area?
Well, I would say it's not challenging at all. I felt like I spent my entire childhood trying to get out of a small town.
Mm,
That there weren't a lot of opportunities. It was a farming town,
okay.
and so to make something of yourself, you had to go elsewhere. So I always wanted to go to college, and it was sort of a lifelong dream. And getting myself there was important.
And help me understand, was that normal at that time?
Normal for
Your family, normal for the
well, no,
town,
no,
normal
no.
for.
Well, as a farming town, so it wasn't normal for my family. I was the first person in my family to go to college, much less graduate. And when I graduated my high school, there was about 400 students in my senior class, and 11% were going to a 4-year school.
Wow.
Where the high school that my son went to, 98% or something go to a
Sure.
4-year school. So it wasn't a common thing. And also being female was unusual, that you were expected to, get married and have kids.
And you just said, I'm going to do.
Not yet.
Okay.
Not yet. I mean, that's on the list, but I got other things to do first.
Help me understand now the dynamic, the shift from watching your kids have what seems like a lot of the opportunities that you didn't have.
Mm-hmm.
We'll start with Michael, because we know that Michael may have followed a more neurotypical track.
Mm-hmm.
But what was it that you sought out to do differently that maybe wouldn't have been done for you and your family in your small town for your children?
Mm. Um, Not as, how do I say this? They get to be kids.
Mm.
And, I had to do dishes from very early. I was like 6 years old, clearing the table and, doing the dishes and stuff. And both Kevin and Michael had chores. They had things they were supposed to do and did do. But letting them, be bored, letting them run around the neighborhood with other kids. So just letting them be kids.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
I think when you have a more rural area, a lot of the things that I guess you would lend itself to being in a city,
Mm-hmm.
probably you didn't have those liberties. So again, just going back to Tracy, the Central Valley, what other chores were you expected of besides just clearing the table?
Oh, we did the family laundry, my sisters and I, yard work. Um, when my sister was old enough, my mother had to be at work by 5 or 4:30 in the evenings, and so Tony would have to make dinner. And so, cooking for the family. And so pretty much everything, not just keeping our rooms clean, but keeping the house clean, vacuuming, cleaning bathrooms.
Wow,
It
you
wasn't,
guys.
it wasn't too atypical, I think, but, it's just a lot.
It sounds like a lot. I mean, and I think even now when you're describing Michael and Kevin, it
Mm-hmm.
sounds like there were expectations, but you didn't expect them to run the household.
Correct. Correct.
Okay, great. Um, can you help me picture and see what it was like now at UC Davis? You've graduated, or you're graduating, and you're looking out for what's next in your life.
Mm-hmm.
What's going on during that time period in your mind? Going back to Tracy, looking for a job. What was that? What was going on in your
Oh, it
mind?
was a very exciting time, right? It was the beginning, it was the early 80s, and computers were really taking off, and most of the jobs were in the Bay Area. So I was very interested in moving to the Bay Area from the Central Valley. But it was a very exciting time. This is what I've been working for forever,
Mm.
and there were lots of opportunities. There was no concept of moving home.
Mm.
Um, After I immediately got an apartment with a good friend, and we commuted in different directions. And I love my family, and I love being from Tracy. That's not where I saw my future. So I wanted to be someplace, not exactly where things were happening, but where there were certainly more opportunities. And while when I started out my career, when I started out in engineering, while all the jobs were here, the industry changed in that it used to be that security was working 25 years at one company.
Mm.
And then it became security is being able to walk across the street and get a better job. And so if things aren't working out here, you can easily find something else. So it felt like a bowl of opportunities. This is where you want to be.
Wow. And at some point during that, if I've got my calculations
Mm-hmm.
right, you looked over and you said, "Who is that?"
Well, not quite, not quite. Um, Walter's a quiet guy. But yes, I asked him out first, and there was a whole series of, comedy of errors. I really think that I believed we were dating and broke up before he ever knew we were dating. Um,
Because that would be Walter.
that would be Walter.
That's
Yeah,
Walter.
yes. So, but yeah, there's some funny stories there about dates and non-dates, and so and dating in the real world is different than dating in college. In college, you go out in groups. We all go get
Sure,
beers. We
sure, sure,
go,
sure.
and then in the real life, it's like you and one person. It's like, oh, I have to be really charming or interesting. I can't. So I think that was hard for us both.
So then, when and where did you meet Walter?
Well, we met. He interviewed me for the job. He was one of the half a dozen people who interviewed me.
Oh, okay.
And I remember thinking, wow, he talks and talks. He's very boring. Um, but yeah, so we met at work.
And then you eventually asked, and it obviously worked out.
Right. I mean, like any dating, any relationship, ups and downs, starts and stops. And um, when we actually, since we were in the same group, we had to talk to our manager and explain we're dating, just so you know.
Yes.
So they were aware early on. And we dated a long time. We dated 4 years before we got married, which to me is a long time. And we ran into our manager at one in art fair, he and his wife. And Walter said, "Oh, by the way, we're engaged." And she looked at me and said, "Oh, congratulations." She looked at Walter and said, "It's about time."
Did you really?
Yeah. Anyway.
Okay. Well, it sounds like at that point, literally life is on the up and up, and you decided to stay. Now
Mhm.
you're starting to spread down your roots.
Mm-hmm.
You and Walter get married. When did you get married?
May in 1987. We bought our first home, a townhome, in the spring of 1989. And then we had Kevin in 1991. So
In 1991.
Right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You have an anniversary coming up too. Congratulations, almost
Thanks.
40 years. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, so at this point, you are pregnant with Kevin,
Mm-hmm.
and do you know that Kevin's?
No, I had a very typical regular pregnancy, nothing unusual at all. So I had no idea. Kevin was late. He was 10 days late, but was only 5 pounds. So some concern about
His birth weight.
yeah. So what's with that? But we knew pretty much immediately within the first weekend he was born. There were just a cluster of signs. I remember a doctor coming to see me in the hospital because I had a cesarean section. It was like the second night, and he came in and kind of worried at me. It's like, oh, we're seeing this, and he's got a high pitched cry, and his ears are kind of low set, and so we're going to run a bunch of tests. So we had an idea, early on that Kevin was different,
Wow.
and but you don't know anything, right? They ran tests, everything came back fine, and you just go home and raise your kid.
Mm-hmm.
And this is when it was hard. So the book, What to Expecting,
What to expect when you're expecting.
and then there's What to Expect the First Year, and I had to throw that one away.
What?
Well, because Kevin was not meeting milestones,
Of
right?
course.
And so when he can't sit up at 6 months on his
just
own,
kind of
like that's just not. So we started down the therapy route. He got physical therapy and speech therapy very early because it was obvious he wasn't meeting milestones. So
was that. I mean, and kudos to you for throwing the book away. Because that's a thought. You could get rid of it instead of.
I mean, there are other moments, and we all have our little pity parties. And at one point, I remember crying at home. It's like, because all my other friends were having kids at the same time, all kind of interleaved.
Of course.
And it's like, why am I the only one whose baby has a neurologist?
Yeah.
That's kind of a big thing. But
yes. Yes.
But we. Like any other child, you love them. You do what needed to be done.
Kevin has such a beautiful and a bright spirit, and he has a bit of sarcasm, which I'm assuming comes from Walter.
Yeah, Walter's funnier than I am.
Okay.
I was horrified when Michael in high school, we asked him who's funnier, me or Dad, and he says, "Well, Dad."
Yeah.
And I was butthurt for. I think it took me a couple years to realize, he's really right. That's kind of funny. Dad is funnier than me.
So now, Kevin is 5 years old, and Michael's born.
No, Michael was 2.5. They're pretty close.
Okay.
So they're just over 2.5 years apart, and we, wanted to have at least two, and. The thing I'll talk about having a child with IDD is I knew so little. You start this journey and you don't know anything. And I found out later, after Michael was born, that because Kevin didn't have a diagnosis specific, he had a lot of tests, but it's not this. We knew all the things he didn't have.
Yeah.
But when a child has an unspecified genetic thing, you have like a 50% chance that the other child will have it as well. And so I had no idea.
You
So
didn't know.
yeah, and we got very lucky in that Michael is typically developing and perfect as Kevin is, but um, yeah, we didn't know, so we just got lucky.
What was going through your mind before trying again?
Um,
What made you, what was that let's just go for it?
well, I know a lot of lovely only children, single children, but I didn't think as a parent that Walter and I, as parents, that we could raise a reasonable only child. I think we would have raised someone who was spoiled, and I think there are things that no, there are
That
things
wasn't what I thought you were gonna
no, but
say.
there are things you learn as a child, sharing attention, sharing time, not just
Of
sharing toys,
course.
that make you a better person, and so they need to be closer. And my sisters were further apart. So, in answer to your question, I wasn't thinking. There was nothing. I just wanted Walter and I wanted another child,
Of
so we
course.
did it.
Of course.
Yeah.
I think, especially because the dynamic, I mean, we read this in your bio, but
Mm.
the dynamic between the brothers is outstanding.
Well, and that we're lucky because that's not anything we did. That's really
Just the two of them.
yeah, and you give as much as they need for how they need. So, for example, when Michael was a baby crawling around the floor, everyone has a Graco pack and play, some sort of playpen
Of
that they
course.
can be in.
Yeah.
We would put Kevin in the pack and play with his books and toys and let Michael run around, to protect Kevin from his younger brother. Where typically you would have the younger one in and the other one. So you just do what works, based on the needs. And what I will say is, Kevin, like my husband, is naturally an introvert. He's a very quiet
Yes.
kind of guy and very serious. My second is like many second children. He's kind of crazy and out there. And and I remember early on saying, "Oh, Michael, just leave your brother alone. Don't quit hassling leave your brother alone." Realizing Kevin needed to be hassled. That
Yeah.
Michael was pulling him into the real world to do all this stuff. Don't just sit and look at your books. Come and be with me. And so I stopped and let them, interact because Michael was really pulling Kevin to where he needed to be.
Yeah. I think it's oh gosh, and I could talk to you forever, but that's also like holding you hostage. I personally feel like a lot of your interactions just with other families
Mm-hmm.
have been life altering for them, and I don't want to speak for everybody, but you have an even kill
Mm-hmm.
when you look at life. I wouldn't call it emotionless.
Mm-hmm.
There's much emotion and passion and love
Mm-hmm.
in the things that you say, but it's even kill. It's
I'm
not.
very practical. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
also I'm very emotional, but there's a time and place, and like grief. When you have a child with IDD, it's sort of a slow drop, and you realize that this milestones he's missing is the thing you can't do. And grief is for me is like a circle that when you first have it, it's really small, not small, but it's a small circle, and you spend a lot of time there. And then as time goes on, it gets bigger, not bigger, bigger, but the time between grieving gets longer and longer. But something will happen and pull you back down.
I
Um,
feel like I'm gonna go home and tell my husband it's okay. Tina told me I can spiral, but you're not saying spiral.
no, I'm just saying
Okay.
that yeah, it can be intense, but as time goes on, it never gets easier, but it's less intense.
Less intense.
Yeah.
Yeah. I want to make sure that I ask this question before we open it
Mm-hmm.
up at the end and let you say anything that you want to say to the world. A lot of families, they really can't see that peak
Mm-hmm.
right now.
Mm-hmm.
They are in it.
Mm-hmm.
And you have what some would call a happy ending in some instance. You found a place for him. You're empty nesters now, and
Mm-hmm.
but it's not always like that for everyone. And it wasn't that you came with a silver spoon in your mouth. You didn't have, your family come and buy a house
Right.
or anything like that, or you come and buy a house. And there's nothing wrong with anybody's family buying a house or anything like that. But just the idea of you living in Palo Alto, some would give stigma or sentiment that, that things are easy for you. What would you tell someone who's in it right now and they don't have the resources, and nor can they have the foresight to see what's going to happen next. What advice would you give to them?
So, community is everything. Other parents have always been my best resource. So, when Kevin was in preschool, who has an ophthalmologist, or who knows a dentist who will do a cleaning under anesthesia? Who gives a good haircut with a kid who, has a hard time sitting still? So, develop your community, because like I felt like I didn't know anything and I was trying to educate myself, but it's so hard. There's a big world out there. And getting to know others, through the school, through friends, that's a start. You get a leg up through that. And the other thing I'll say is that it gets better, right? And things change and they don't stay the same. And there's always ups and downs, and there's moments of joy, and there's hard moments. I mean, they're funny in hindsight. So, for example, with my typically developing kid, and with Kevin, we're going to make cookies. I'm a mom. In addition, I felt strongly, it's like I get to be a mom. I shouldn't always be doing therapy for Kevin. We aren't always running here. I get to do regular things. It's important for him to do regular things. And so we're making cookies. And I'm trying to get Kevin, okay, let's pour, let's stir. And he's like, I don't want to do any of this. And he'll grab the spoon. And Michael's like, I can do it. I can do it. Let me put the eggs in. And so I'm beating off one with the spoon, trying to get the other to do it. So it's funny in hindsight, but it's just difficult in the moment to do what needs to be done. But it gets better.
Thank you for sharing that. And I think if I could reiterate anything that really resonated with me from what you just said is community. Community is extremely important, and one of the reasons why we're doing these conversations, these podcasts, is so that you can start the conversations with other community members. Comment on this post, share it, see if it sparks up conversation, see if somebody comes out that you didn't know was a part of your community. And also give yourself space to grieve. I love the idea of the circle small at first and then it gets bigger, because you're walking circumspectly, really looking at your situation from different angles. And that's certainly true of the way that you scale any mountain. Sure, some people go straight up, which we find is the hardest. But the incline was created so that you can take your time, but slowly but surely come up and around and peak at some point. Certainly for Tina, she has mountain climbed better than most of us. But she's not saying that she had it easy, and she's also saying you can do it too. And so, with that, at the end of every one of our episodes, we give space for our mountain climber to say anything that they want to the entire world as we listen, and I remain silent while you say it.
Oh, it seems very important. So, the thing that I would like the world to know about us and about Kevin is we want for Kevin what we want for our typically developing son, Michael. And Kevin, I mean, he wants what other kids want, what other adults want. He wants to live as independently as possible. He wants to do something meaningful. He wants to have hobbies and time to enjoy them. He wants to have friends, wants to be included. So it's important that others understand that they're not scary, they're not different. They're just like you. We all have a common thread. So it's important to treat everyone with respect. And I'll close with not close, but I have a story about Kevin recently had a medical procedure where he had to swallow something while they were x-raying his esophagus. And he's very quiet. And when the very young doctor came in, and Kevin was reading a music book and they started a conversation. And Kevin is hard to understand. He's got some oral motor difficulties. And unless you know context, it's hard for an unfamiliar listen to understand what he's saying. So Kevin looked up from his book at the doctor and said, "What is the Pokemon Charizard's best attacks?" And the doctor, without a beat, said, "Oh, he's a fire Pokemon. He's got Fire Spin and Flame Blast." And so for the entire visit, while Kevin was drinking and doing this, Kevin was asking questions and the doctor was answering, and the doctor could understand him because he had the context of Pokemon and because he's a young guy and he did Pokemon as a kid. And it was just lovely to have a regular interact. I mean, it was kind of funny. They're talking about Pokemon, but Kevin, could respond and he could respond. It was just amazing. It was very nice.
In a language that he can understand.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for sharing that. And of all the things for the doctor and Kevin to relate on, that is touching in so many ways. How young was he?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I would like to thank all of you for listening today. I had a bunch of questions. We threw them out the window a while ago because Tina, you really are amazing of a person, a mother, community member advocate, a board member, and then someone quite selfless, beyond measure.
You're very kind.
Yeah, I too am a mother, and I was like, oh, you're supposed to make them cookies. No, check. I appreciate you coming and sharing today, and I hope you enjoyed this particular series. If you haven't seen any of our other podcasts, please do. Thank you for listening to this one. Thank you for watching. Share it. Again, comment or send us a message. You can find out more of these podcasts and other stories like Tina's and Kevin's and Walter's and Michael's on lsahomes.org. That's www.lsahomes.org. Also, follow us on our socials for when we're dropping more content and sharing more stories. But we've enjoyed doing this particular segment because we get to hear from parents and family members. We get to hear from advocates and IDD individuals themselves. And then also because we find it relevant. Right now, there's a lot going on in the world. And it's important to just be human for a second. So again, if you've enjoyed these, stay tuned for the next episode. If you haven't seen the other ones, go back and watch them. Thank you again for joining us. Take care. Bye bye for now.